Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you for listening to Talking Fit. Whether you're listening to this on your phone or in your car or watching this on YouTube, I really appreciate it. If you're taking the time out of your day to listen to me talk about fitness things or motivation things or nutrition things, I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you can tell that I don't take that time for granted and try to give you as much free, valuable, applicable information as possible on how to achieve your goals. So if you do feel that way and you do feel like this stuff is valuable, just please hit the like button, drop a comment if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast platform like Spotify or Apple, leave a review or be really awesome and send the link to someone or post it to Instagram to get more people to listen. I really appreciate that, and it helps the podcast go a long way. So this week has been a crazy week in my life. I actually really tweaked my back really, really bad coming up on almost 2 weeks ago. So I haven't been able to lift weights in 2 weeks, which has been kind of shitty because I like lifting weights. So I've been able to train, haven't been able to work out. First couple of days was actually like spasming hard. Like I would get out of bed and my foot would touch the floor, my right foot would touch the floor, lower back would spasm and like literally buckle my knees out from under me. And it would just be excruciating pain. And me being me, whether you consider this cool or blatantly stupid, didn't adjust my work schedule at all. So I was still waking up at 4 a.m., still training my in-person clients, still doing all of my online stuff. And then the only thing I was really doing differently was I wasn't lifting weights. And then this past week, I got hit with a nasty bout of food poisoning or something, but it wiped me out. Again, still did all of my, normal job tasks and dad tasks throughout the day. I just wasn't able to eat for like an entire day. So the reason why I bring this stuff up is because for a lot of people, this sort of occurrence could be the reason that they feel discouraged or that they've ruined their fitness progress. For someone who's trying to lose weight or trying to change their body composition or just build new habits, if they went 2 weeks without exercising and then also got sick, I've had people say to me, this is where I would normally give up. And I don't say this as in like, oh, I'm special because I'm not giving up or any sort of way. It just goes to show you that someone who is a coach, someone who has been consistent for a very long time, still goes through the stuff that you may be going through. So whether you've gotten sick or you have an injury, this stuff happens. And when this fitness stuff becomes super, super consistent for you, the thought of like stopping doing it never enters your mind. Like it never would cross my mind that, oh, this is why I would just stop working out altogether. Maybe temporarily I can't work out for a couple of weeks, but like I'm not gonna stop doing it. That doesn't make any sense to me. Same thing with my nutrition. It doesn't make any sense to me that I would just eat differently now that I was sick for a day. I would just go start getting McDonald's every morning or getting Dunkin' Donuts every morning. And I don't say that in a judgmental way. It's just if you're at a point where an injury or getting sick sets you back mentally to the point where you think about giving up, it just means you haven't been consistent long enough and this hasn't become enough of a habit yet or is ingrained in your life to the point where quitting would never be an option. That's like it's like having a toothache and being like, well, now I'm never brushing my teeth again because I know what it's like to have a toothache, and now maybe it hurt that one tooth for a couple of days, but now I'm just done. I'm giving up on brushing my teeth. I'm never doing that shit again. What's the point? I'm throwing in the towel. All those phrases that you hear pop up along the way as a coach. It just doesn't make any sense, but for some reason with fitness and nutrition, giving up just seems to be on everyone's mind as a potential option. You just got to stop making it an option. And that kind of leads us into today's topic, which is 3 strategies to build self-discipline. And when I talk about self-discipline, I'm not talking about it in like this crazy, sort of doing cold plunges and walking over hot coals sort of way. I'm talking about how to develop daily self-disciplines so that you can be more successful with pretty much anything in life, any habit you're trying to build, but we're going to relate it specifically to nutrition and fitness today. So the biggest misunderstanding about self-discipline is that people think it's like this inborn trait. They think you either have it or you don't. And I apologize for not having the exact reference, but they've actually studied like people's brains and stuff like that. And there's no physiological difference between someone who's like maybe a professional athlete who has a ton of discipline and like the average person. The main difference between someone who's very, very disciplined and someone who's not is that people who are disciplined believe they have self-disciplined. Believe they have self-discipline. That's a really big trait, and I know it sounds really stupid or kind of simplistic, but people who have a lot of self-discipline just really believe they have self-discipline. They identify themselves as a disciplined person, so it guides their behavior in that direction. Someone who lacks self-discipline is someone who constantly says, I have no self-discipline. You tell yourself that story over and over again so it becomes true. I think everyone has their own circumstances in life that makes things harder. Maybe you have certain things that you're maybe weaker to, or it's harder for you to say no to, or there's a lot of hurdles in your way. But it's not because you don't have self-discipline. You just keep telling yourself you don't have self-discipline. Self-discipline is a skill that gets built over time. It's not an inborn trait. It's a learned skill. The majority of people who possess more quote-unquote self-discipline just believe they are more disciplined people, so they act accordingly, and they set up their environment, or they're in environments that cater to discipline and structure. For example, I'm sure you've seen this in movies, or maybe you know someone in real life. The typical story of a teenager or someone in their early 20s who's just like kind of a wild kid and like all over the place, maybe gets into trouble a lot, and then they join the army, and then they come out the other end and they're like this super disciplined, polite person, right? The environment of being in the army in those situations creates an environment of discipline and structure. Now, luckily, as just everyday citizens, we don't have to do something that extreme to build self-discipline. We really just need to create some systems in our life that make it harder to say no than to say yes to discipline. So most people, and I know it's hard because of the way society's set up and the way businesses are set up now, and with the internet, it's much easier to say yes to convenience and comfort than it is to say yes to cooking your own food, or going to do a workout, or going for a walk instead of watching Netflix. Like, we have to create situations and environments where saying yes to the behaviors we want is actually easier than saying yes to the behaviors we don't want. So it's really just about building your environment around that. Like another example would be like athletes. If you've ever seen like someone who's a very successful high school, college athlete, they're very in shape. They're very disciplined they show up to practice on time. They understand the consequences if they don't. They are they're just disciplined in their behavior. And what I see for a lot of those people, it's the reverse effect of what I talked about with the army. Is they're disciplined and in great shape all through high school and college, and then if they don't make it to the pros and they get a regular job, they lose a lot of that structure. Not all of them, it's not 100% rule. And yes, there's some mindset aspect into it. Like if your dream is to go to the NFL and you don't make it, there's that mental health aspect to it as well. So I'm not downplaying that. But for the average like high school athlete who knows they're not going to be a pro, but is very good, when they leave that environment and someone's not holding them accountable for working out and eating a certain way, they tend to swing the other way, and that all or nothing behavior. And a lot of them gain a lot of unwanted weight. They become very out of shape going into their late 20s, early 30s. And then in order to turn that around, it's very hard for them to build those habits back up again, because they need some sort of coaching system in place. They need that external accountability. So the things we're going to talk about today are ways to build accountability and build discipline into your life without necessarily having to go through boot camp or go through anything super extreme. So strategy number one, or tip number one, is going to be to create barriers between you and the foods or behaviors you want to cut down on. Okay, so I'll say that again. You have to create barriers between yourself and the things you don't necessarily want to be doing, or you know that you shouldn't be doing. So small, really simple things like not keeping foods you tend to overeat on in the house is a huge way to create a barrier between you and that behavior and that food that you don't necessarily want to be eating all the time. Again, game changer, just super simple, but it's whether or not people choose to do it. Like when you go to the grocery store, there's not an employee who stands in the cookie aisle and puts cookies in your cart and then walks you to the register and makes you buy them. You choose to do that. So there is a step there of just not buying it. And for some people, that may be a big hurdle. But for a lot of people, it's not. It's just you're so used to that behavior. But not buying these foods and keeping them in your house will cut down on your overeating and over snacking a shit ton. So for me, for example, like I don't really have any specific foods at this point that I'm like triggered by. And I don't say that in like I've never had that before. I just been working on this stuff so long, but like, background, like, when I started watching what I ate, I was like a younger kid, and that developed a ton of other disordered eating patterns in my life. But one positive that came out of it was that I learned to say no to things at a very young age. And, my parents, my brothers, my family, friends, people didn't eat like me. So there was always junk food and trigger food around. I just developed the habit to say no. But on the flip side of that, when I got the opportunity to do so, I would binge the fuck out and eat way too much. So I had to fix that over time. That was my, hurdle to overcome. But for a lot of people, they're still in their adult years and they don't know how to just like not grab a cookie when the cookie's in their house. They don't know how to not make a bowl of ice cream when the ice cream's in the refrigerator. And they think it's because they don't have self-discipline. Like you'll hear it all the time, like, I just can't keep that stuff in the house because I'll just eat it. Well, what's the hurdle there? What's the solution? Instead of just listing the problem and blaming it on a lack of self-discipline, just don't put it in the fucking house. And if you have situations where you have other people living in your house and that's a hurdle because they like that food and they're not choosing to go on the same diet as you, that becomes another conversation. That could be a way of communicating it to that person. If you're, a couple who doesn't have kids, right? So it's just the two of you. I feel like that's a kind of an easier conversation to have, to say to your partner, like, listen, you're an adult, I'm an adult. If we want ice cream, let's go get it once a week at, whatever ice cream shop is near you. Get one serving, eat it, and no big deal. But I want to stop keeping it in the house because having a half gallon of ice cream in the freezer is just not really benefiting either of us. And for me, I can't really, have it in the house where I'm going to overeat on it. So that seems like an easier conversation to have. Obviously, you want to tiptoe on that line a little bit when you have kids. You don't want to tell your kids like ice cream is bad or make you fat. But ask yourself this question, like, should my kids just have open-ended access to ice cream as well? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. But for me, like, I just don't keep ice cream in the house. I don't think my son needs open-ended access to ice cream. Neither do me and my wife. And honestly, at this point, I don't need to not keep it in the house to avoid it. But I just choose not to. It's such a habit not to buy it at this point that I just don't buy it. But if ice cream is not in the house, the chances that I'm just going to get up, go to the store, buy ice cream whenever I feel like it is very, very slim. The times that I really do want some, we each get a scoop and we eat it, and then it's done, and that's it. Very, very simple. So just don't keep trigger foods in the house. Have that conversation with people in your house. And if you have kids and they tend to eat that stuff and they don't understand why you can't have it in the house, ask yourself the question is like, well, do my kids need open-ended access to this type of food also? Do they need Doritos with their lunch every single day? Is that the choice I want to make for them? Is that the food I think they even should be eating every day? And again, I'm not judging you if you say it is, whatever. But again, like, if you don't think you should be eating it every day, maybe your kids shouldn't be eating it every day either. So maybe not keeping it in the house would be a good idea. And once in a while, when you guys want those foods, that's not a big deal either. Go get them, but don't keep them in the house. If you're at work, if they're ordering pizza in the break room, like, create that barrier. Say no. Like, setting those barriers, being able to say no, saying like, I'm actually taking my lunch at a different time today, or I brought lunch today, and whatever. Like, create that barrier. Don't walk by the candy bowl at the secretary's desk every fucking hour. Take a different route to get to the bathroom. If you're someone who orders out a lot on like Grubhub or DoorDash, delete the apps off your phone, right? So you delete the app off your phone. If every time you want to order something, you have to re-download the app and re-log in and all that stuff, you're less likely to do so. So I know these sound very, very simple, and you might be like, oh, Adam, well, fuck that. Like, that's ridiculous. I shouldn't have to delete an app off my phone. I shouldn't have to not buy a certain food. I shouldn't have to not walk by a candy bowl. Well, then that becomes your issue that you're not ready to change yet. And that's really as simple as it is. If you're not ready to make these changes, then you're not really wanting the result. And that's not a shot at you. That's not right or wrong. It's just, if you're not willing to not buy Doritos and keep them in the house, if you're not willing to delete an app off your phone that you tend to use a lot, then you're just not ready to make these changes. And then we can have a separate conversation on that. But if you're ready to make these changes, these are simple things you can do to make the process easier. Self-discipline is like a battery. It only has a certain amount of power. It drains very quickly. So the more you have to say no to something, the quicker that battery drains. So if you have constant temptation all around, every time you say no, you're draining that self-discipline battery. So by removing these obstacles from your day-to-day, by removing the foods from your house, removing the app from your phone, wherever it is, you now don't have to use self-discipline as often. So you have your battery lasts longer, and it makes it feel like you have more self-discipline, but really you're just controlling your environment. Step number 2, or strategy number 2, make the food or behavior that you don't want less appealing. Okay, so this is more of a mindset thing. You have to make the food or behavior that you are trying to cut down on feel less appealing than it is. So don't just think about the taste. Think about how you feel after, physically or emotionally, right? So let's take like ordering Domino's off Grubhub. Don't think about how good it's gonna taste on the first bite. Think about every time you've done that, how you feel when you're after eating it, how you physically feel, how you emotionally feel, whatever that is. Now, this one, again, it's more of a mindset thing. It doesn't happen overnight, but you really have to start associating behaviors with emotions and feelings, and not just doing the behavior just to do the behavior. Your new habits need to have more value to you than your old habits, or you won't break them. If you view your old habits as this oasis of freedom where you can do anything you want, this hedonistic like island where you can just have anything you want, and you view healthy eating and working out as this prison where you have to do these painful, inconvenient things just to get through the day, why the fuck would you choose to be in prison over being on that island where you can have whatever you want? You have to flip the script. You have to think about it in a different way. Think about working out and eating right and eating whole, nutritious, nutrient-dense foods that fill you up, that help you create a leaner, more toned, healthy physique, that help you feel better digestively, that help you sleep better. Think about the metabolic, the metabolism effects, the boost in metabolism that you're going to have from eating better, from exercising. Think about how you're going to look, how you're going to feel, like how confident you will be, how you show up, how you look naked, like all this stuff. If you're in a relationship, think how your significant other will be attracted to you. Think about, if you're not in a relationship, think how this is going to make you show up on dates and show up to people better. And when you meet someone, think of all those things and associate those emotions, those feelings with the process of getting in shape, and then look at the behaviors of not being in shape and start to really break those down and how you feel physically and emotionally about them. Do you feel great when you order Domino's and eat the whole pizza? Probably not. And this can go one of two ways. This can be like the person who is very sedentary and overeats all the time. This could be on the other end of someone who's just overly restrictive throughout the week and then has that binge behavior on the weekend. What is your hurdle to get over? But you have to start looking at the behavior you don't want and associating it with the feeling that you get physically or emotionally after you do it, and then focus on that. So don't just think about the taste of a certain food, think about the feeling. And this isn't creating like a certain, this is a good food or a bad food. This is how I feel when I order Domino's on a Wednesday instead of cooking myself a meal. Think about that. Now, that feeling can be different in different circumstances. So for example, if I go out to dinner with my wife and we get a date night, which is very rare now that we have a 2.5-year-old son, if I go out for dinner with my wife and have a date night, I associate the food and drink I'm going to have at that dinner with the joy of going out on a date night and connecting with my wife without having to manage a 2-year-old, and the fact that we don't get to do this very often and we get to go someplace nice. That is the association I have with that food. So whatever I order at that meal, no matter what it is, I'm associating it with a good time, a good emotion. So if I have, 2 old fashions or 2 tequila seltzers or 2 glasses of wine, and I eat like a cheesy bread appetizer or nachos or whatever the fuck it is, and I get a dessert, that meal is associated with that good time. But because that time is not happening every single day, that's okay. And I associate those foods in that moment with that good emotion. Now, if you flip that on a normal Monday, the idea of having 2 or 3 glasses of wine and eating out and eating those same exact foods with the same person, with my wife, is not as appealing, because I don't want to feel like shit on Tuesday morning when I've got work to do, a workout to do, clients to train, and I've got content to write and a 2.5-year-old to take care of. I don't want to feel like shit on a Tuesday. But if I feel a little shitty on a Sunday morning because I went out to dinner with my wife the night before and we ate out and we drank 1 too many glasses of wine, I'm totally okay with that. Like, that's the difference that you have to start making. That fun behavior is good and it's actually healthy for you in moderation. But doing that shit all the time and feeling like shit all the time is not. And that's why you're not going to be in the shape you want to be in. And when I'm talking about being in shape, I'm not talking about like, oh, you have to look a certain way. I'm talking about how you feel, how you perform, how your longevity, all that stuff. How your metabolism is, how your thyroid is, how you feel about yourself. Like, you have to start associating those good emotions with your day-to-day behavior. So for me, for my clients that I work with, that is the work that we do. We look at working out, at eating a certain way for the positive stuff we get from it. So it gets to the point where having that crap convenient meal on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night and then feeling like crap the next day and having a bad workout and just not feeling good digestively the next day, it's not even appealing. It's not even like, oh, it's not worth it. It's not even appealing. It's not even something that we want to do. Now, again, just like I said, when you get to a point where you can do that in moderation, those moderate times that you do it, that stuff becomes a novelty. And when something is novel, it is more exciting and you enjoy it more. So just to kind of, bullet point that, if you associate your healthy behavior with good emotions, you will want to do it more frequently. If you associate your poor behavior with the bad emotions, you will want to do it less frequently. And by doing that, you will start to look at the quote unquote like poor behavior in some novel circumstances actually becomes healthy behavior. So going out for a date night or having a birthday party or going on vacation, when you drink a little bit too much, you eat a little bit too much of good food that you don't normally eat, it's okay to feel a little like shit the next day, but you're probably actually going to consume less of it because you are now at a point where you have a healthy relationship with that stuff. So I hope that made sense to you, but really, like, that is some next level shit that you have to focus on. Because if you get to that point where stopping at Dunkin' Donuts for a donut or a muffin or a wrap in the morning doesn't even feel appealing anymore, then you've crossed the barrier, my friend, and you are on the road to success. Because the initial hurdle was being like, but I want to get my muffin and my Starbucks every morning. Why do I have to eat this omelet? Right? That's the first reaction. But once you do it for a while and you associate that omelet, you associate that protein-filled breakfast with that positive physical and emotional feeling that you get, once you get to that point, the idea of going to Dunkin' Donuts doesn't even sound fucking appealing anymore. So that's where I'm at with that in my life, and that's where most of my clients are at this point too. So step number 3, this is the hardest one, because there's a lot of moving pieces here, a lot of variables. But building a new social circle is very, very important to this. You have to create a new identity for yourself. Now, this is not black and white and confrontational, and it doesn't mean you have to cut people out of your life. Like, I know that's big on like social media now, like you gotta cut toxic people out of your life. Now, I do believe there is some truth to that, but I understand it's not always that easy. There are people in your life that you love that maybe just don't share the same beliefs or the same behaviors as you. And this is generally a broader topic that we could talk about. We can go into like all different sort of like differing beliefs between people and the people they love. But if we're gonna stick to like maybe a little bit of a more specific topic here, when we're talking about food choices and workout choices, you don't have to stop seeing or caring about some people just because they choose not to work out or they choose not to watch what they eat. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to really wrap your head around the fact that if you're constantly around people who see you as the current or old version of yourself, and they have not changed or not changing their habits, you will be far less likely to change yours. People are tribal by nature. People would rather, this is very important, most people inherently, in their souls, subconsciously, people would rather partake in poor behavior but fit in than partake in good behavior that benefits them but stand out. People don't want to stand out by nature. It's just evolutionary. We want to feel safe. We want to feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. So that means to the average person, if you don't want to be overweight, but you're the only like fit person in your group, you will be more likely to partake in overweight, out of shape behavior in order to not stand out, even if you don't want to. So imagine how hard that is for someone who's trying to go from being overweight to being in shape. If you are someone who is, overeating or drinking a lot or never exercising, and all the people you hang out with not only do that stuff, but they also scoff at it, or they think it's dumb, or they make self-deprecating jokes about it, and they include you in that joke. Like, and I don't say this in a mean way. I've just seen it before, where like two people are talking, and I maybe know one of the people in the conversation better, and I know how they feel about themselves and how they don't necessarily want to view themselves in a certain way. And let's say the person I'm talking to is also kind of overweight. That person will make like an overweight joke, but include that other person in it. So like, big guys like us, we don't blah, blah, blah. Or big guys like us, we like to do this, blah, blah, blah. And that's, maybe just having met each other and not really knowing much about each other, people will, do that to each other. Like, bring you into that tribe. They see you in that light, even if you don't want to see yourself in that light. And it fucking sucks. And I've seen it happen. It's happened to me before, where like I've literally had circumstances where like back in the day, and not to get into super detail because it's not important, but basically like where I felt like maybe I was getting a little chubby, but like I didn't know if I was chubby or not, and then someone says something because they think that you're chubby, and then you're like, oh fuck, like I didn't realize it, right? So for most people, if you're already identifying yourself as someone who's out of shape, who doesn't work out, who doesn't have self-discipline, you hang out with other people who are out of shape, who don't work out, who eat like crap, and say that they don't have self-discipline, what are the chances, if you're around that all the time, that you're going to be the one that breaks that cycle and stands out? It's very hard to overcome that. And it doesn't mean that you're not strong enough to do so in the long run, but it is very, very hard, and it makes the process way harder than it needs to be. Now, some of these people in this circle may be closer to you and it's harder to break away from them. It might be your husband or wife. It might be your parents. It might be your best friend. But you have to start creating some barriers with the social situations you put yourself in with those people. And it's not easy. I understand that. But you have to start hanging around people who make the choices you want to make. Because we go back to that tribal mentality. If you are hardwired to want to fit in, and you start hanging out around people who are doing fitness things, you will be way more likely to do those things just for the sake of fitting in. And it's I know it's easier said than done, just like everything is, but you have to get on board with that to a certain extent. It could be one person that maybe you have a very close friend who who you can confide in and they work out all the time. Maybe it's something as simple as like hiring a trainer or joining a workout class just to get yourself around other people who are doing it. But if you're the person who views yourself as like, I'm old and washed up, or I'm just, fat and lazy, and then you hang out around other people who call themselves fat and lazy, guess what? You're going to keep being or exhibiting the behavior of fat and lazy. But if you hang around people who are more motivated, more positive, willing to, not say yes to every single thing that's put in front of them, like, you will be more likely to do those things. So if you're eating with people who all eat healthy, you're less likely to be the person who's going to eat unhealthy. If you go to dinner with a bunch of people all the time who all drink as much as they want, eat whatever they want, it's very hard for you to be the person who says, I'm going to order the lean protein and produce and starch, right? But if you go to a lunch and everyone at the table is ordering the lean protein, the produce, and the starch, and only having like one drink instead of 5, you're very less likely to be the one person who's like, no, I'm going to have the double cheeseburger and the cheese loaded fries, and I'm going to get 5 margaritas when everyone around me is not doing that. Like, you're not going to be that person because you don't want to stand out like that. And at first it will be uncomfortable, but the more you stick with it, and as you lose the weight and people see those changes in you, like, you're going to feel more confident, and you're going to stick to those behaviors more. You got to like stick with it long enough to see the value and be confident enough in yourself and in the process to stick with it. So it feels very difficult, and the reality is, like, if your social circle is just constantly drinking, eating junk, not working out, and you're also making fun of people who work out, it's going to be an uphill battle. But if your circle is people who have a healthy relationship with fitness, they eat healthy as they're normal, and then once in a while they have slice of pizza, it's not a big deal, like, then it will become, much easier to stick to. Now, these are also not tips that, like, I just invented off the top of my head before you're like, oh, well, Adam's probably just full of shit. Like, these are actually proven strategies that work, and I got the nuts and bolts of them and put my own spin on them, but I got the nuts and bolts of them from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, which has sold over 10 million copies and has helped a lot of people. So, and I've also intentionally applied these things to my life, and I've unintentionally applied them through my life without even knowing it, just through the process of becoming like a coach and developing a lifestyle that's based around fitness. So I know that they work from personal experience, and I know that they work from, proven research. You just have to start applying them. So create barriers, make the unwanted behavior feel less appealing, and start working on your social circle, and you will be very successful with this, or at least have a higher likelihood to do so. If you got any value from this, guys, please subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, and share it with someone that you feel might benefit from it. But other than that, guys, I appreciate you listening, and I'll talk to you soon.